if it's okay with everyone. So what I thought I would do, because there are a number of new people, is I worked on a PowerPoint last night, which I'd like to share with you, because I think that the first thing is not necessarily all of the developments and everything that are happening with the charter, as much as just giving you an idea. If you've come to this meeting because you're interested in compassionate communities, I thought that what I would do is just try and put together a few slides. And I apologies if I missed a place like where you're from, but I tried to put in all Canadian pictures for this PowerPoint. And the idea here is, how do you even start getting involved to develop a compassionate initiative? And the very first thing you need to do is to find a few like-minded people, because this is not something that you do by yourself. You need help in the process. And a beginning point is as you begin to form this collective of people, I think the conversations should center around what are the good things happening in your community. By the way, we'll make certain that you get a link to this PowerPoint so you can use it in any way that you want. And then the third thing, Marge, there's someone coming in. Um, I can get them right now.
I got them.
Okay, so determine what you think might be something missing in your community or something that causes you to be upset. Um, and, when Karen Armstrong, the founder of the Charter for Compassion, was asked, what makes a compassionate community? And she says the realization that there's something missing, that children might be going to bed hungry, that there's not equal access to education, that healthcare might be a miss for some people in the community, that there's not good communication between certain areas in a community, within the city. There might be turmoil between local police and the community. So it's like, what is it that rises up? And then the next thing is, as you look at your team, because you always start out with people who think like you, um, but then the next step is like, let's expand our team. Who's missing from the table? Is it an age that's missing? So do we have enough youth who are involved in this particular venture that we're about to start on? Do we have people from all sectors geographically in our community? Is there ethnic variance? So those are things that you want to pay attention to. And then, what are the next steps? And sometimes this happens with my computer. So I just might have to revert to this. So then, to look at, it's so important, and I'm going to get rid of you folks so I can see my full screen, so that you begin to narrow down and think, okay, let's focus on something very specific like education or healthcare or social justice, uh, public policy. The charter has 12 sectors right now within which we work. And so, we really span what it happens in every community. And so, what's the outcome? What do you wish for your community to begin to really work on? Let me move to the next slide. Okay, then what are your overarching goals? The more focused and clear your goals are, the more sustainable funding that might be available, maybe locally, maybe through a Rotary Club or a Sister Cities project, even from a local community trust. I don't know in Canada what those institutions might be called, but in the States, they are often referred to as community trusts. They hold money and they offer some grants and support to different projects. You want to make certain that the goals that you're creating can be eventually measured. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And you want to be able to show that you really truly are making a difference. And, how do you build a coalition? Um, so here's what I often tell people: approach a mentor from your local city government, someone who really is compassionate, someone who has shown that they really are action based, listening deeply to community needs. Involve them right from the very beginning. Doesn't have to be the mayor. It doesn't have to be somebody from your local city council. It could be someone who works in a department who will introduce you to other people. But you do want to have a connection to your local government. Then you want to find partners that really are related to the work that you're going to do. So let's say that you decided that you really want to work on healthcare in your community. Well, it would be crazy if you didn't begin to look at who are the healthcare providers in your community, who might be interested in informing your work, or how you can simply say, how can we help you? And you want to invite, again, as you expand and build your coalition, you want to pay attention that you're building a fair and credible team of people that others will look to and listen to and respect. And you want to celebrate what's going on well in advance. And you want to help others celebrate the good things that are happening in your city, or you want to latch on to something that's already in process as a celebration. And, as you do that, you want to let people know that you want to acknowledge the Charter for Compassion, not as necessarily just as an organization, but as a concept, as a document, something that was legitimately launched at the United Nations in 2009. And you want to start building a database of your supporters. Who's out there that really might be someone who has a passion for compassion, who has an expertise, has, hands that can really get dirty and involved in what you're about to look forward to. And look to the Charter for Compassion as you build these goals and objectives. And you want to start raising activities to help garner support and get more volunteers from the grassroots team. You want to maybe sponsor activities which the charter is behind, like the Compassion Games, or come and join us. With our global reads, you can have those on the ground in your own communities, but rely on the charter to give you the background information, or any of the things that Marge had indicated that we're about. And we have a lot of activities. Like right now, we are celebrating 40 days of peace every single day between the beginning of January until March 1st. We have at least one thing happening at the charter. And all you have to do is go to the charter's website. On the front page, you'll be able to click and see exactly what each of those things are. You might think about sponsoring an annual event eventually. Doesn't have to be from the startup, but like, for example, I know that when Handves voor Compassie in the Netherlands, Compassionate Netherlands, started, it took them about a year, and then they decided that they wanted to give a compassion award. And they awarded one award a year. And in the beginning, it was just their committee who made a decision about, who was going to receive this compassion prize. They actually had some business supporters who made that prize not only significant for the honor of receiving it, but they also were able to give a little bit of a cash prize to that individual as well. Now, the annual Compassion Prize in the Netherlands, everyone can vote. It's announced in the papers throughout the country. It's a small country. Nonetheless, people vote on who is it that's going to get a Compassion Award. And usually the award reflects the areas of concern that Handves voor Compassie deems as something that they want to work on, like people who are working in social justice, in education, in sports. Sports is a big thing with the charter in the Netherlands. So these are the kinds of things that you can eventually get involved in. By the way, everything that I'm saying here is not some, instantaneous process. For some organizations, for some groups who commit to trying to work on a compassionate initiative, it might take years. The fastest that I've ever seen a group bring a resolution to their city council was just little over a year. Compassionate San Antonio, one of our most compassionate cities, took 10 years of development before they brought it to city council. So here's what as you build this coalition, as you do the kinds of activities, as you bring in new partners, and you ask partners, what is it that they can do? What is it that they need to be done on behalf of their organization? And oftentimes when you do this kind of work, the surprising thing is that people are working in silos. They're working in parallel tracks, and they don't even know what the work is that other people are doing. And so oftentimes a compassionate movement within a city really is applauded because of the fact that it begins to network with people. And here are some things that how the charter can help you in this process. We have a toolkit, and there's lots of steps, lots of ways to, with, really, I think, very clear, distinct direction of what to do from the very beginning to the evaluation and measurement area. We are launching mid this year a brand new course that we're doing in conjunction with Emory University on cognitive-based compassion training. And one of the things about a compassion movement is that the very first step for especially any team member is that they have to know how to be self-compassionate. If you're not self-compassionate, then it's really very difficult for you to be compassionate to others. So in the past few years, we have worked integrity training, but now we are moving into what is usually called CBCT, cognitive-based compassionate training. It's a 10-week course that will, as I said, we'll begin doing in mid-year. The other thing is joining the Compassion Games. I'm not going to talk about them today, but this is a 6-year commitment that the Charter has made to work with small teams of people from local areas, cities, where you work together y compasión, a highway of peace and compassion, where we are uniting the cities from San Antonio, Texas, across the border to Monterrey, Mexico. That is a community of about 60 different cities, towns, and villages. And we're trying to help each of those communities to become compassionate communities, but then also to be aware of the needs of each other regionally. And this is a pretty tender place between the United States and Mexico. It is the corridor, the drug corridor, one of them. And so this is a big undertaking that we are committed to. The fourth thing is that we have just signed a memo of understanding with the Permanent Secretariat of the Nobel Peace Laureates. There's so much to talk about here. I'm not going to do it right now because we don't have enough time, but suffice it to say that what we will be doing, and if you want this to happen in your local community, we are working with secondary schools and colleges and universities to bring them into the fold of a network of institutions that are dedicated to peace. There's coursework that's involved. And if the young people in these high schools and within the university college settings fulfill the obligations taking a course that we will help these institutions establish. It's all set up. We will work through the process in that way. And so when these young people graduate, they will get a separate certificate saying that they have completed this course of study with the Nobel Peace Laureates. And as importantly, just as we participated in a summit with the Peace Laureates last year in Monterrey, Mexico, young people who are part of these programs have an opportunity to come to summits. This coming year or this year, there are two major summits, one in Delhi in July and another one in Merida, Mexico in October. And then, the other things, as Marge said, we have all of these programs and we have really active sectors, but we really are promoting very much what we're doing in education and in healthcare specifically. And then, the impact. This is something, remember I said that, as you come together and you're figuring out your objectives, think about how can you prove to a certain extent that you are making a change. And the charter is participating, and it was a launch that happened last Thursday in New York City, something called the Muhammad Ali Compassionate City Index. This is the first time that measurement has happened in cities. There were 12 pilot cities. Um, I don't know, I don't think they were selected randomly. The charter had nothing to do with the selection of the cities, but of the 12 cities, 6 of them are affirmed compassionate cities. And in the report, which you can all get through our website, and also if you go directly to the Foundation of Muhammad Ali, um, you will find that the report states that a compassionate city has much more flexibility, is able to be more resilient in times of crisis, finds its way into making its presence known through political action. So the results of this initial survey are really quite amazing. It was, as I said, 12 cities. It's going to be much bigger than that in the near future. So that's just a real quick overview, some of it containing what we're doing right now, but at the same time, just giving you a flavor for what would it take in order for you to create a compassionate community. Marge has experience in doing that. The people in Winnipeg have been
Yes.
about the conversation for quite some time. And we have a couple other compassionate communities in Canada, but I think the interest is ripe, and we're here to help. So I'll just
I,
stop.
well, I was just going to say, we invited Winnipeg, and I should have said at the outset, to talk about the good work that they're doing. I think I want us to convince them that they really should be a compassionate city, because from what I've heard, they definitely are. So, Marilyn, I'm not certain if you're going to talk much more, but I really had meant to say something at the beginning, but I asked Gary. Yeah, he
You
could
answer the question later on.
Okay. Gary and Devon, and I'm not sure if Jermaine, who else from Winnipeg, but you guys were going to just tell us some of the great compassionate work that is happening there.
Thanks, Marge. Maybe I'll kick it off, and then we'll have some members of the team jump in a little bit along the way here. But in Winnipeg, we've been following the compassionate movement for many years. We think compassion is it's a good time to use that word and to use values, a values-based system to bring something forward. So when I mentioned a history with the charter, a number of the folks that are on the phone here from Winnipeg right now, and I can see a few of them, are, excuse me, just got another phone there. We're actually in Louisville, Kentucky for an early exploration of the charter back in 2011 and 2012. And that event, I think you can see how important that event was by the fact that 4 or 5 of the folks that are on the phone here from Winnipeg actually participated in that event at the time. So good things have been happening here. And, when we talk about Winnipeg, most of the other Canadians on the phone will know where we are. but we're right in the middle. So that's what we call heart of the continent. So we've got a lot of heart here. We've got a lot of work here. We also think it's important that it's a meeting place. So Winnipeg happens to be at the confluence of two big rivers, the Red River and the Assiniboine River. And Indigenous communities and settler communities have met here for thousands of years. So we think that's significant. Our city's got a lot of work in peace through educational institutions, like the Morrow Center, the Global College at the University of Winnipeg, and Menno Simons University with the Mennonites. So we've taken all of those things together and we've said, let's get started. So with the group that's on the phone, and I'll let them speak in just a minute as they choose, but I would say that we sort of pulled the team together, and Marilyn was good enough to come to Winnipeg back in the fall, and that was a bit of a catalyst. We've got the team together. So when we look at those slides that you had up, where you said, here's maybe a way to start, Marilyn, we've started with the team, and we've got, I think 4 or 5 of them are on the phone right now. Good things are happening was the next part of her slide. So a number of us are already involved with organizations, so it's not going to be hard for us to pull in a bunch of collaborative folks. Looking at needs, so we did that, and we've assessed 3 main areas of importance for Winnipeg, and Devon can speak to this in a minute in more depth, but homelessness, safety, and youth. But then we also are taking a bit of a sector approach and looking at the 12 sectors and saying who in the city might be able to look at a particular area, for example, health. So I think Dan Lucier might be on the call, who actually attended in Louisville as well. And, he might represent the health sector sort of thing. So we're starting to pull it together. So I just wanted to give you that enthusiasm. And maybe I'll let Devon speak a little bit just about those 3 that I mentioned and his perspective on it. And then the rest of the team can at least say hi as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Marilyn, for the presentation. As you were going through your PowerPoint, I'm just checking off all the things. I mean, yeah, we're doing that. We're doing that. We're doing that. The key piece you mentioned was about the fact that people often are working in silos. I can tell you Winnipeg is doing so many of those things, but the key that you mentioned is that people are doing it in isolation. I think the biggest challenge we have is that people don't know all the really great things that are taking place in the community. And when they see something that's challenging, they think that's just the way it is for everyone. Don't realize we're doing all these really good things. Now, for the rest of you who don't really know Devon Clunis, I was the chief of police in our city from 2012 to 2016. And at that time, Winnipeg was perennially the murder and crime capital of the country. And when I took over as chief, I said, I really didn't want to continue with the status quo, more police, that wouldn't work. But what I actually employed was very much everything we were talking about in terms of a compassionate approach to policing. We were looking at the root causes, ensuring that, for example, children are growing up in a safe, healthy environment. Things that people typically say, well, that's not really policing, but it was all about taking a very compassionate approach. And after a period of time, you actually saw that the membership of the organization, 2,000 plus members, started believing and acting in that fashion. We didn't put any more money into policing, but we saw a massive drop in crime. When I'm out in the community, people would consistently say to me, we feel the difference. What they felt was that compassionate approach that the police were taking. And, when I announced my retirement, I went to serve at a soup kitchen in downtown Winnipeg, and the homeless were coming in. And I'm in uniform. And one after the other, they kept saying to me, thank you. Since you became the chief, your officers started treating us differently. I'm not there when every officer is dealing with a homeless person at all different hours of the night. It's simply because we show them the value of compassionate policing, how it can truly transform a community. And we became very cohesive. Sadly, we've gone away from some of that, so we need to get back. But the key pieces, that Gary mentioned, I think really, if we're really going to transition coming out of COVID, coming out of the whole effects of George Floyd, communities have become very disconnected. So you mentioned community engagements, Marilyn. I think that's going to be key. So one of the things we want to start doing really grassroots is having those community conversations, getting us out of the silos, recognize that there are good things happening and the negative issues we can work on together. Our youth are feeling incredibly disenfranchised right now. I think we're going to lose this generation if we don't take, real meaningful steps to really engage them. And Jermaine, I'll have him talk about what they're doing in relation to the youth. And certainly the homelessness issue, it's an epidemic right now. And I think sometimes people have just kind of thrown up their hands saying, what can we do? There's a lot that we can do. I believe we have all the resources within our city to actually address and fix this problem overnight, but we can't simply wait for government to do it alone. I think the leadership along that line needs to come from us, the people, and then government will get on board. So we're already lining up meetings with government saying that we want to be that great support and working together collaboratively like this. I think Winnipeg, I'm putting it out there. We're going to lead the compassion movement, not taking anything away from Richmond Hill, Marge, okay? Together, because we're at the center of the continent.
Yep.
I want us to be this massive shining light that people are going to say, what's going on there? They're attracted to it, and we're going to help transform not only our country, but all of North America. We're on track to do that, and I believe we can, because we have all the right pieces here, all the ingredients are in Winnipeg to accomplish that.
Okay.
Jermaine, would you like to say anything about what you're doing with youth?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Hello, everyone. So my name is Jermaine Fraser. I work with a charity that actually goes into schools to do youth leadership programming. And I actually moved from Ontario to Manitoba to be able to do that. My wife and I have 6 children of our own. And, our heart is to serve, right? So on the license plate, in Manitoba, that's like the first thing I noticed, that it says friendly Manitoba, right? And that has been my experience in terms of the connection, the 1 degree of separation. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody that is connected to you. So we go in, we run summer camps, we run workshops, we do assemblies, and it's all connected to finding the gifts and the skill sets that you have within, and then making a difference in your community based on those things, right? So we talk all the time about what it means to be compassionate, what it means to care about somebody else, right? And the difference that it can make when you spread compassion in your community. So I am excited for, what's happening. And as Devon said, we want to be the leaders in this movement to really have impact. The young people are actually ready, and they're passionate. They've gone through a lot of things, like Devon said, through COVID and with the things that are going on in the world. This is the time, right, that more than ever before, that we need compassion in our cities. So
I'd love to chat with you. I'm heavily involved, obviously, with children and children around the world. Nothing so far in Winnipeg that I'm aware of, although my resources are available globally, but it is definitely youth targeted. And I think we could do something really amazing. And I've just recently started penetrating the Caribbean for the first time ever. So I have a little update on that. Marilyn, I'm heading to St. Lucia is the next destination in a couple weeks. So I was in Jamaica. We've been in the schools there. So Winnipeg is definitely something that
yeah. I was born in Jamaica, so
Oh, okay.
Likewise.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to
so
message you my details right now so you have them.
Yeah, so inside of 2 days, I went to 8 schools, and then also looking to partner with Sandals Foundation. And the schools that we were in Westmoreland. So we were in, the back outskirts of civilization. And I mean, if you know, right? So yeah.
We'll come with you next time.
I needed some bodyguards. I had a driver. That was it.
We got you.
Okay, good. Awesome. Not at Sandals. At Sandals, that was okay. But I would love to collaborate and connect with you on that, and send you the resources and the activity books and the children's charter, which was a direct correlation from Karen Armstrong's charter in 2009. So that's a whole other story. But I just wanted to interject on that. It's a pleasure to meet you guys, and congratulations on what you're doing.
If I can interject here, Erin is part of our Artistic Bridges program, which is the Charter's efforts to look at art in all of its various forms and have children contribute to an ongoing exhibit And so, we're ready for any elementary school, even preschool, up through high school. And we are creating books and books that are animated, where the youth and children could record their stories, their poetry, do dancing, do films, photography, and art. I don't know how many books we have at this point.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing project, and it's a gift to children from children of the world.
The other thing I'll also say about the Children's Charter is that it's not only for children and youth, but for illiterate adults who want the concept and the benefits of the Charter for Compassion, because it's a very simplified version of that, and new Canadians and language barriers and those kinds of things. It's actually it's pretty diverse in that regard, but it was the original inspiration was to do a children's sort of version take on the original charter.
So we have Dan and Perry, if you guys have anything you'd like to say from Winnipeg as well.
Well, maybe I can jump in and hello everyone. My name is Daniel Lucet, and just want to echo again and maybe a shout out to Gary, Devin, and the team for their continued leadership in this area. Just amazing people from our community and leaders from our community. So it's great. Jermaine, it's good to see you. So I've been involved in this conversation for quite some time. Oddly enough, my name is Daniel Lucet, and I'm with Réseau Compassion Network, which is an organization that is a sponsor owner of a number of health and human service agencies here in Manitoba. We were born through a religious congregation, and now we have the responsibility to move forward. So we, for one, are quite interested and involved in conversations around dehumanization of care, which is very evident. We think that the health system is cracking. These are very complex, vulnerable, uncertain, dynamic environments. The health system's always changing. It's always under pressure for funding in Canada. And even coming out of COVID, you've got organizations that are supposed to be there for people, where the people themselves are really challenged. So we've been involved with CCT, so the Compassion Cultivation Training, when it began through the University of Stanford, Dr. James Jody and JIMPA. In fact, I bragged that I was the second cohort to have been certified from that. So we brought in a bunch of different contemplative approaches just to get healthcare providers and leaders to connect again to the world around them. They need that type of support, because if they can't connect and be aware and be present to the person in front of them, I don't know what person-centered care is going to look like. And so in our organizations, we want to make sure that that's not something that is neglected. And so we have some organizations that are really thinking through how to create conditions for compassion to flourish in organizational life. And again, it's a long journey. So we've got an institutional focus, at least with the organizations that are part of our network here. And we'll see where that goes. We're also deeply committed to community and figuring out. I love hearing the homelessness angle. We're involved in that through many ideas around affordable housing with support services, deeply affordable services. We're involved in those conversations and new strategy that comes out here in Manitoba, which is already out. So what might we do to go further? And then the last piece I would say that is extremely important, I think, for all our communities in Manitoba is the enormous efforts we need to deploy to get on with reconciliation with our Indigenous people here in Manitoba and in our communities. Canada's not done a good job with the way we've our relationships with Indigenous Canadians. The trauma is there, residential schools, the colonial approach. And unfortunately, you can take every health indicator and realize there's an overrepresentation of Indigenous on the wrong side of those numbers. So there's lots of work to be done. We need to walk in allyship alongside Indigenous communities, figure out how to do that, and get behind the change that's deeply required so that everybody can reach their full potential. So in those areas, I'm deeply interested in figuring out our little journey here with our head in the ground. What might we bring to this conversation and support what's going on in Manitoba? I'll end on this, and thank you so much for even giving me the privilege of this time to chat. I want to speak to Devin's point. I actually do feel from where I'm sitting, particularly with the homeless strategy coming out, particularly reconciliation, I'm starting to see in this community more and more opportunity where people are coming together, where those silos are beginning to break down. So we're in a moment of time. It's not perfect, it may never be perfect, but we're in a moment in time. I really, really feel, I really have a felt sense of it with the people I see and I work with and the meetings I'm at and when I'm walking in the streets. There is something. We're at this time, and I think we need to take advantage of it. So I'll stop there and thank you and create some space for everyone else. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And Marilyn, maybe I'll pull that together a little bit too. So we looked at all those sectors, and we're just in the point of sort of filling them in. So Dan just gave a good example of on the health side. On the education side, we've got a lot going, and I had some meeting today with educators. So for each of those sectors, we'll try to fill it in. The one that isn't maybe there in terms of in the charter so much is the Indigenous, and Dan referred to that particularly for Winnipeg and for Manitoba, that's a big part of our community. And I agree with him completely that the timing may be quite unique and appropriate to engage deeper and to bring that into the reconciliation conversation. And we have another team member, Terry Brown, who I don't think is on the call tonight, but
He's here. Terry's here.
Oh, is Terry here?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So he's very engaged in that, and we're looking forward to, his giving us some guidance as we go through that. And if he's on the line and wants to say hello, then that would be a great point too.
Sure. Thank you all for making time. My name is Terry Brown. I'm also known as Mi'kmaq Taqumskmaq Napiu, or Red Star Turtle Man. In the home region of Winnipeg, it's the right time to create something like this. For the first time in Manitoba history, we have a First Nation premier who understands the challenges, so very attuned to that discussion to create. We also have a tremendous amount of economic wealth that's centralized in old money in Winnipeg. So there is the opportunity, because fact be told, the only national museum outside of Ottawa in Canada is in Winnipeg. And that's due to the ability and the compassion of our city. And I would rather see that compassion be utilized to prevent vulnerable citizens from being vulnerable anymore, as opposed to a big museum celebrating or teaching something there. So that's why I'm engaged in this. And I look at this, I'm the descendant, I'm the great, 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 great grandchild of Chief Peguis. I think back to how he'd look at this land and the development and how disappointed he'd be. Few people realize this, but in First Nations, you have mandatory overcrowding, but you don't have homelessness. Like when I go to sleep in Winnipeg every night, I feel for every citizen that we put in jeopardy. When I go to sleep on a First Nation, I don't feel that way. Right now, I'm in North Dakota in Bismarck because of the lovely Jade Treaty and the lovely side of the American institutions, because the main challenge in our home region of Manitoba is First Nations citizens are seen as cost drivers, Native American citizens cost drivers instead of revenue drivers. The vast majority of America, like Mr. Trump, loves Native Americans and sees them as revenue drivers. I hope one day that we get that same opportunity in Canada, so we're not just seen as a social cost, and it's more so about the economic opportunity. So I'm very excited, and I have to give a huge commendation to Devon for convincing me on why I should be involved in this cause and pushing it forward. And there's only two reasons people do things, and that's either hope or fear/shame. And I'm pretty sure that the premier will be on board for this type of thing, and then the other levels of government will use the other levels to convince. But from a citizen where I see vulnerable citizens every day in Winnipeg, that's something I want to eliminate. And I know that's something that would make my great, 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 great grandfather very proud of the land we created there. So that's something where in Winnipeg, that vulnerable citizen side, where even now I don't say homeless, I say vulnerable citizen. And I'm like, wow, because the amazing side, when you say homeless, they get that stigma, and I feel so horrible there. So just a huge thank you. And I apologize for being late to the call. I got grand chiefed earlier tonight by the most famous Indigenous Terry ever, Terry Nelson. So feel free to Google Terry Nelson, because I'm only terry-brown.com. So thank you for the opportunity to speak there and all that good stuff there. And Marilyn, it's nice to see you again. So
Nice meeting you,
Green
Terry.
Manitou. And no, I'm quite looking forward to making Winnipeg, instead of all the negative things, to have it as a positive beacon of hope. Because Winnipeg translates in my language to muddy water. So
Yeah.
very simply put, I would love to make muddy water a beautiful place.
And I think that, as we move forward, and Gary, I appreciate you pointing out that, in all of the sectors, there's not one that is called Indigenous. And, that's a big conversation. And one that I think we will address and continually address up until the time we all arrive in Winnipeg for this big celebration, right, Devon, that we're going to have at the museum there in 2 years plus time. And this is going to be a great opportunity, honestly, for all of us who are on this call, but for the Americas generally. And I hope that it will be an opportunity where we have people from all different groups, including the Indigenous. But the big reason to come to Winnipeg is because of the Indigenous. And we have a wonderful advisory board member that has been guiding us for the last years, Chief Phil Lane, who's over in the Vancouver area, and a few others. And so we're looking forward to the journey to Winnipeg.
Is there anyone
So I
else
think
who wants to speak? Oh, sorry, Gary, I just, there's a few people on the call who I don't recognize. I'm wondering if we've got like 15 minutes or so, if there's someone else. And Gary, has everyone spoke from Winnipeg? I lost track there.
Yeah.
no, we have Perry still, only if he wants to. No
Okay.
rush, Perry, only if you want to.
Okay.
Bob too, right?
Well, if you're speaking, Perry, I think you're muted.
The Bob's from Toronto.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. And as you mentioned, there's a number of people might be on the phone. Shirley Hurst might be there, Perry Kimmelman as well. But if no one else wants to step forward just on the Winnipeg team, maybe I'll just close by saying I hope we just gave you a sense of that we are making progress, and we're about to ramp it up a little bit. And I appreciated the enthusiasm I heard from the group that's part of the team. We are going to look at the sectors overall, but we want to focus, particularly on homelessness, safety generally, and youth as being, three very important initiatives. And I would also say that we've mentioned the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. We've had a number of meetings with them, and they're very interested in what we're doing here and would be supportive of it. And they're developing a digital learning center, which could be very significant, again, for the charter to be able to use to amplify the voice of education. And so we also have a big focus on education. Just as an example there, we're working on a high school ethics bowl program that started in Winnipeg, is now going national. We have a Peace Days walk for young people. We had 800 last year, and the minister was out and all, that sorts of things. And we're working on a youth nuclear peace conference summit that'll be in November. So we have already a lot of organizational talent in the education field. And it's fun to think about it, of the opportunity of technology today. So we also run things called Brews and Views, which is a cute name for it. So you get that's for sort of the 20-year-olds and up on the education side. And similarly, our Manitoba Association for Rights and Liberties has an ethics cafe that's really interesting. So those are just a smattering of some of the things that we got going. And I'll throw it back to Margin.
I see Dawn's hand up, and I do not know where Dawn is from. So yes, Dawn.
Hello, hi, well, evening here, everybody. I'm actually in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Okay.
And it's great to hear about all the positive things happening in Winnipeg. And so it changes my question a little bit. But coming here from Vancouver, I just see that in such a large city and so much bureaucracy that when you say you can change health or education, it's like I don't quite know how. Like myself, I used to work in education, and I do have my background and my doctorate in education, and I worked at UBC helping. I think in a time before compassion was used, I taught a course called Social Issues in Education, which was all about helping courses teachers learn to accommodate the many diversity, indigenous people, and multicultural education, and all the kinds of issues, and poverty in education. And I particularly worked actually with the indigenous cohort, even being sent to places like Bella Coola, and Kamloops, and different places teaching with the indigenous people. And then I started a program in the Downtown East Side with the Vancouver School Board Adult Education, trying to work with people who had been marginalized and improving education. And I did that for many years until they just actually closed the school. I mean, the one place where people could get off the streets and come back and try to improve their life, they just closed it. And I had worked in the school board also as a sort of anti-racist consultant. So I just know how hard, even in the inside, changes, right? How, like you could teach your university course and then hear later that, teachers said, oh, you made a difference in my approach to working in different issues. But to change systems, I just, and especially when you're outside of the institutions now, I'm not, associated with them. I just don't know how you do it in such a big place like Vancouver. And perhaps we have more bureaucracy here, and perhaps the Downtown East Side seems so overwhelming now, even compared to when I worked there. I mean, it was 4 blocks, now it's 12 blocks. And it seems like people on the drug problem is worse. So I just don't quite know where you start. We don't particularly have a mayor that's interested in these sorts of things. So I don't know. How do you get a team to actually have impact? I guess that's my question.
Marilyn, do you have any insights for her?
Yeah, I hope I do. And, I'm not going to be able to deal with it in 8 minutes, but I'll start, and then Dawn, we could certainly continue a conversation. And I can give you some examples. For one, Denver. Denver felt overwhelmed. There were a few people who came together as a team, and they happened to be from the same place in the city geographically. And the thought of trying to reach out to all of Denver was overwhelming. So what they decided, and this is what happened in Denver, they worked by neighborhood, and they flipped the neighborhood. So that when they really got a compassionate thing going in the Latimer Square area, then what they did is they flipped it to geographically to another, and brought in and mentored another team of people. When you think about like an issue, if you get a few people together, it's not a bad thing to begin the process and not have the major goal be that we need to get the mayor to sign on and the city council to be a compassionate community. It might never happen. I have to tell you, there have been people who have tried in Vancouver. You have so many mayors, so many divisions within the city. I mean, how many cities have as many mayors as Vancouver has? And so the thing is if you have a passion for education or something specific within education, trauma-based education, addiction, special education, SEL, whatever it might be, and you begin to find a group of people that you can form a conversational circle with. If you could then bring that circle, like one of the things is when I met Daniel in Winnipeg and recognized, and by the way, Daniel, thank you, I use this book every day, and recognized that he worked in healthcare, I wanted to invite him immediately to the healthcare sector, because here's a group of doctors and first responders and nurses, people in research. We meet once a month. We don't know who's coming to the meeting, but let's say in truth, it's a support group. all of these people have not only an interest and an expertise in some healthcare field, but they have a burning desire to share what they have, but also an intense, deep listening skill and an ability to really help one another. That might be where we start. It has to be small in many instances. You might find that in doing this and, really connecting with the charter, our database is extremely large. We can do a search and find out if there's anyone in your immediate geographic area. There's lots of potential here, but I mean, the big thing is that we have to hold ourselves to hope, especially during this time. That is one thing that we can give to one another, and we can share our angst with one another and be transparent with one another. And that's why the charter really deals a lot in circles of trust, circles of conversation, circles, helping circles. So it's just the beginning of answering that, because I also see that there's another hand up.
Dr. Schoen is, I think you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you. Thank you for noticing. Well, I'll keep it short, but I just want to thank all of you in Winnipeg and everyone on this climate, and Marilyn. Thank you so much for creating this. And Dawn in Vancouver, I'm on Salt Spring Island. And before COVID and everything, I had given a lecture to the local Rotary on creating a compassionate islands movement, because islands are more concentrated, less populated, and there's so many islands, not just in BC, but I mean, Manhattan is an island. There's so many islands, Australia is an island, New Zealand. So I thought, if we created a compassionate islands movement, it might make a more local, active community. So that's number one. And then number two is I'm teaching online a program called CALM. That's a nickname for it. It's the acronym for the Compassionate Animal Lovers Movement. And as one of the pillars that I've lectured on for years, but now it's really coming to birth, is what you say, it may take a long time and patience, is one of the pillars of the Compassion Island of the Conscious Animal Lovers Movement is compassion. And I presented that for years now, but now it's really happening. And everything that I write on compassion, I refer to you, Marilyn, and the Charter for Compassion and Karen Armstrong, and I bring that into how important that is as a major criteria for holistic integrative veterinarians. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Marge, for seeing my hand. Thank you.
Okay, any other person? We've got a minute or so left. Bob, sorry. Yes. You are muted.
Muted.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm from Toronto, and so I've heard some of the comments around housing. There's certainly a crisis. I just wanted to share a bit of information. I happened to be last night at a city budget planning meeting in our neighborhood, and the middle of the meeting, the mayor floated in and immediately took over the meeting in the process. But one of the things she said was one of the problems was in terms of affordable housing, the definition of affordable has been totally inadequate. So what she said is, for the city of Toronto, affordable housing means 30% of income.
Yeah.
Now that, and she said, I don't know the details, but we're back in the housing business. So that was encouraging. And I just want you folks to know that, because we've been hampered by this dreadful definition of what affordable housing means, so it doesn't help at all. Of course, countering that is the power that the provincial government wields, and Doug Ford has not been helpful on this issue. So anyway, personally, I'm involved in the climate issue. We have a local group here where I live and a strong group in Toronto, but I really appreciate being able to listen to what's going on and encouraged by what's happening, particularly in Winnipeg, and hope to follow up.
Yeah, Bob, I love to, if you could email me, I'd like to talk to you about Alliance for Livable Ontario, some great things that are happening there, just in case, may want to make sure you know about that. So, yeah, I'll make sure I can find out, I can email you. Okay, Marilyn, did you want to close? It is 7:31. We said we'd be an hour. I think we're going to try to meet about every 6 weeks, just for momentum's sake. So, can you just encourage people to attend some of these fantastic things that we have?
Well, I certainly can. And like one thing that I have to say, I'd love for all of you to consider coming to my music show, because I am convinced. I mean, I grew up surrounded by music. Marge comes. I have over 100 people who are registered and don't all come, but they're able to access the platform. And it's a program to really help us look at how we are really bound by sound and by the sharing of people's cultures. So it's a global music show with themes. Sometimes, right now, I'm doing 8 weeks on legacy of Martin Luther King and the African American movement and its contributions, and really tracing missing pages of history. We have a global read once a month where we have incredible writers who come and talk about their books. And there's one coming up with Rabbi Berger, I believe, and it's Elie Wiesel's Classroom, so that you know that Elie Wiesel wrote Night. He won the Nobel Peace Prize, a survivor of Auschwitz, and you know that the rabbi was one of his students, and he's written about lessons learned in Elie Wiesel's Classroom. So our books are once a month, sometimes even twice a month. So you're more than welcome to come to that. All of these are free, unless, of course, you want to give a donation for any of it. But we do have courses through our Charter Education Institute. And as I mentioned, there is a course that will start probably in May sometime, on cognitive-based compassion. One other one that I really want you to come to is going to be on February 28th, and it's on an ambassadors program. And it's for community ambassadors, like every one of you who are on this call. How is it that you can become an ambassador to your local citizens as well as to local government? And there'll be a guidebook that you can walk away with. It's a contribution from Compassionate Sacramento to everyone in the charter. And so they'll present their case study of how they even invented this thing, how they utilized it, and how they're turning it over to everyone who's involved in the Compassionate City Initiative. February 28th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. A great way of knowing what's happening with the charter is just to go to the homepage, www.charterforcompassion.org. On that homepage, one of the first things you see is events, special projects and events. Every day is listed. You click on that, you'll get the information that you need, description, and registration link. So that's my conclusion for
And
tonight.
I want to just give a shout out and thank you again to Devon for joining us at last night's Black Canadian Narratives. You were inspiring, Devon, and I'm so glad you've hooked up with Rachel. I feel really good about making those connections with everyone. And I'm hoping Rachel can offer us another course. That was, and we got one more to go on. It was again Black Canadian Narratives, and yeah, it was, anyways, it was something I feel good that I had a part in starting out. They're just, and as an example, who knows what you're going to have happen. Okay, we were about over, so, I'm died. Okay. So I was recording, but that's enough. Yeah, I know.